Hi, it's Doug Black again. We're at the ISC 2024 conference, and I'm now with Bob Sorensen. He's analyst at HPC AI, industry analyst firm Hyperion Research. Bob, welcome.
Hi, Doug. How you doing today? As always, a pleasure to have a chat with you today.
Okay, great. So um, tell us about the conference. We're now at the end of day 2 or 3, depending on when you got here. And is there anything really catching your eye or a trend that you're finding a little interesting or maybe a little surprising?
Well, the trend of the day is two large letters, AI. Everything here is now AI. I think I've drunk at a water fountain this afternoon that was AI supported. So that seems to be the major trend right now. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's trying to figure out where it's going. And I think most importantly, the HPC community is trying to figure out what this is going to do to their most compelling computational workloads. And I think for many organizations, the jury is still out on what AI, and in particular, large language models, generative AI, can bring to the scientific and engineering community versus the general promise of large language models and their applicability to much more, for lack of a better term, enterprise applications. Things like chatbots, language translation, summarization, making sure my PowerPoint deck looks appropriate versus how does this accelerate computational workloads in science and engineering fields that are much more technical, much more legacy based, and have a much greater requirement for precision, reproducibility, accuracy, and explainability. So we're all exploring that together as a body here. And this conference, in my mind, is the first place where I've seen that happen writ large. I'm looking for this to be kind of a theme for a couple of conferences, SC coming up in November, and for the next few years, exploring the potential of AI in what it really means to the community.
So, in this sort of a transitional period, rapid transition with a lot of uncertainty, do you have sort of principles that you share with clients on how to proceed, maybe lower risk, but not get paralyzed either?
Well, the first thing we were doing is trying to think about characterizing what, and we're kind of zooming in on large language models here because that seems to be the cause célèbre right now. And I say that there's one interesting way to think of the large language model universe, if you will. Over on this side, there's the box that has a large number of GPUs doing a training session. And that ultimately has, in some sense, a relatively small number of organizations, things like OpenAI and Tesla and Facebook. That's a very tall box with very narrow. On the other side, you have the inference camps. And there you have much less GPUs per training session or actually per inference, but there's an awful lot of end users out there that are interested in the inferencing phase of taking a training model and doing something useful with it. So my question becomes, the area of the big box, the tall, thin box, or the low, wide box, which has the greater area? And I think that's the interesting question right now because, yes, large language model training is interesting, it's esoteric, and it's very lofty in terms of the organizations that are conducting it. But from the inference phase prospects, we don't know how that's going to really shake out. If I'm an organization, I get the large language model. Is it open source? Is it proprietary? Is it ChatGPT, whatever, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or a counterpart piece of code? And then, of course, I bring it in. I want to do some fine tuning to make sure it's applicable to my particular workload, and then I want to inference the heck out of the thing. What does it take to do that computationally from an end user perspective? Do I do it in the cloud? Can I do it on my existing hardware composition, which may not be as GPU intensive as some people think it needs to be? Or do I have to go and buy a whole bunch of GPUs to support that computational workload? Again, the end users, I think, are grappling with what is inferencing going to cost me in terms of hardware, and how much do I have to commit, and how often do I have to commit to upgrading my inferencing hardware from an end user perspective? A lot of good questions.
Yeah. And what's the right infrastructure for me kind of idea. So, how is Hyperion kind of responding to this milieu that we're in now?
Well, what we're doing is we're trying to sip from the fire hose, and really what that means is concentrating on the HPC user base, finding out first off what are the questions that they're trying to ask, and we started up an AI advisory council, which isn't it doesn't dictate solutions. It basically says here are the main questions of the day. We want to take those questions and go out and talk to as many end users as we can, whether it be in person or through a survey mechanism where we say, this is what your cadre is thinking. These are perhaps not the safest bets, but there may be safer bets in terms of you finding a solution. So we're really exploring the technology along with everyone else because nothing is carved in stone. And we had an interview today with some folks, and they said, can you do this on a monthly basis? Because it's moving that fast. The idea of what's happened today, what's happened tomorrow is on everyone's mind. You just don't know how fast the trajectory is going to go. And we may look back a year from now and go, what were we thinking all the way back in 2024? So trying to stay on top of a bucking bronco is really the mental picture I have on all this.
Okay, so a fire hose situation, I'd say.
I'm mixing metaphors like crazy here. I apologize.
All right, we've been with Bob Sorensen of Hyperion Research. Bob, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Doug. Oh, a pleasure as always.